This one go hard. This one go hard.
Yeah.
I'm not Korean liking this one. It's about kind of gorillas feel.
They beat real hard.
Little dark, yeah.
No, cut ahead bobbing, messing
Well,
up
they
my
don't
rhythm, buddy. Head bobbing in the wrong direction.
No, that because you hear it later than me because I'm so far, dog. I hear it good here, you know. You hear it after me.
I
Good
get it
night.
Pacific time.
Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world right now, and welcome to another edition of the Heights Room, where we keep it heightsy, no matter what. You know, we all in different rooms, but we in one heightsy room right here on the platforms, live on Facebook, live on YouTube. Make sure and share. Don't afraid to share. Sharing is caring.
Yes.
You understand?
Sharing.
You don't
Yeah.
know. And I heard my
Don't
boys,
stick
the Torian himself, Linton, Shankara Lessie, keeping it messy out in the Micronesia there. How everything
Right,
there right
right.
now, let's see. Cool and just
Well, boy,
calm and
Yeah, but raining we asked too. You understand what I'm saying?
well, you can't run from that.
Is yeah, well, Pohnpei is actually holds the record. I think it's the second highest rain in the world. So in the world, you have two places that is getting most inches of rain in the world, and Pohnpei is the second highest in the world. You understand what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
but
We don't get
Abu
flood.
Bakr there? But do you have Abu Bakr there? That is the real
Nah,
question.
we had
Do you have Abu Bakr there? I know you say over there are
we had
militants,
a
want to them
level.
for let down militant. I know it's militant man that out there.
Yeah,
So I see
Abu
my
is
boy
jokey
Abu.
militant. Understand?
I
I
see
was
Abu.
joking,
Yeah.
man.
I
You
didn't
don't
say
let
that.
me
No,
hear
it's
that
jokey
I
Abu.
didn't
militant.
say
I
that.
gonna tell you why. I gonna tell you why.
I
But go
He
ahead.
named
I didn't say
Shankara.
that. The views expressed on this show is not mine. Right? It's not mine. Abu
Yeah,
Bakr
clearly.
challenges the government. What we had
I
to say
don't
about
know.
this, Abu Bakr challenges the government. That ring a bell? What really going
Yeah.
on here?
No, they
What's
can't
new?
help it.
What's
Yeah,
new?
well, you see them fellas thirsty too. You understand? Because you're out of the limelight for so long. So then, no, he probably watched Heights Room Throwback the Cool episode. And I was like, boy, I was really bad in the days, boy. You know? So, we had to come back on the Heights Room
Yeah,
again.
glad.
So, you know what I mean? Yeah, so he come out and think, but he make sure and wait for Gary to come out the acting COP position before he make him
You
move.
seeing that?
You
You
understand what I'm
seeing that?
saying? Them
You
fellas are
seeing that?
easy. They don't
So
know,
what
they
they
know the
really
mafia does
what
run.
let's see, you watch the video. What is the main point of it? What is the
Yeah.
main point of his sentiment?
Well,
What is his point?
you see,
Main
well, you
point, because you
see, he
talk
wasn't
real thing.
specific. Yeah,
You have a
well, the
point?
main point is that he didn't really have a point. He just said that the police and the government are basically taking advantage of people of African descent. He tried to pull a kind of racial card with it and say that
Okay.
how, the victimization of the African people have to stop, and that, he is sending a stern warning to the government and things that, you need to stop this or else. So he just talked for you know what I mean? And in talking in riddles for that long, at the end of the whole hour, everybody was like, yeah, all right. You understand what I'm saying? But at the end of all of that, I still say, you wait until Gary go on to say that. You understand what I'm saying? Because he just said, and knock and was like, and he'd be like, yeah, hello, are you Mr. Abu Bakr? You understand what I'm saying? Police would have reached by
Timing
him.
is
You
everything.
understand? But,
And Shambi say he's
timing
an
is
influencer trying to make some content. That's all he is.
yeah.
He's but a simple man.
Yeah, he need to get TikTok. You understand?
Well, moving on to some more serious matters, hopefully. Hopefully that matter not really serious,
Hopefully.
because he can be serious, hopefully.
Mm.
Less than 1/3 of the children population is vaccinated, and the minister is lamenting that fact. And I mean,
Yeah, well,
I don't know what they were expecting, because children are living with parents, and how much of our
right.
parents are vaccinated. You know
The
what I
adult
mean?
population
So,
want to be
yeah.
vaccinated.
Yeah.
I know it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's sad. Well, I guess the prime minister, not threat, but his saying to get serious with people who not going to school. I guess it didn't really hit any. It didn't convince anybody otherwise, because plenty children. I was talking to some friends of mine, and they also children not vaccinated. I guess online learning for them. I know they're doing online orientation.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah.
Today's
Well,
Wednesday. No,
online
tomorrow's
learning will
Wednesday.
be.
Online orientation. So
And
looking like
well,
everything online.
if it is one child is vaccinated in a class, then it's online learning for everybody, because you're not going out to do one child. You know what I mean?
Right.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's
And
really
next thing too, how
up
much?
in the air right now.
Yeah, but
It's really up
principal
in the
saying
air
at
as to
all.
how.
Principal saying at all, Qatar, in terms of like, what is the minimum amount of people they have to have for teachers to come out and teach?
No. No decisions being made until decisions. It's a top come down thing. So you can't really look to say something, because that whole thing can get turned if tomorrow they say, all right, we start mask for everybody. You understand what I mean?
Right.
So you are looking to, nobody are looking to over think. That's not we think
Right.
here. You understand? So
Right.
take it as it come, take it as it go. But the reality situation is, children not getting vaccinated in the way that they would have wanted them to open back school for a majority of people. So we'll see what goes on with that. Tens of thousands of vaccines due to spoil in November. So it come like coconut. Tens of thousands.
Well, that's why it's sounding like a man make a macaroni pan and forget it outside in the night and forget to put it in the fridge and next day it spoil. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But and everybody was struggling for Pfizer a few months ago, Qatar, and everybody was grabbing and then was going to Miami to take Pfizer and all kind of thing. Oh.
Well, let's see. The people who go in Miami went Miami. The people who not go in Miami don't want to go it is tied into each other too. It is there's a certain amount of preconceived thought among different sectors of society when it comes to the vaccine. That's no secret. So you're going to have that people who don't pick up themselves and travel just so it's the same people who wasn't going to travel with anyhow because they're not on it. You know what I mean? So it's a funny thing when you really look at you have to kind of take these things into consideration. So what's really happening is that now they want to give it en masse and people ain't taking it in that way. So what you have happening is that they're going to have to, what they're saying here is that due to the slow uptake and the looming expiry date on the Pfizer vaccines, because remember we said Pfizer is one that in cold storage and our big way and so on. Minister of Health Terence Dial Singh announced that teachers and healthcare workers would be eligible for the Pfizer vaccine well, that was August 29th, they say. So that's before. This is an older
But then let me ask
no.
No.
This is the saga. This article is the whole saga. So that was August 29th, and right now they get in it. But going down more.
But then tell me this, Doctor. If it run out by let's say let me say it's due to spoil in November, is it then that Trinidad go and take the position? Because I hear things bad in Grenada, I hear Realment, I hear Grenada on lockdown. They don't have enough vaccine and that kind of thing. So is it that the Trinidad government go in and share it?
Do they have a demand for it? If they have a demand for it, we should. If they have a demand for it, they should. Because in Jamaica doesn't have the demand for it. But maybe Grenada does. As you said there, let's see, for Pfizer, they donated 305,370 doses will expire sometime in November. Now that's all that was donated. Obviously, I don't have all the figures says how much was used, but all of them would have had an expiry date of November, right? Given a deadline of October 14th through 17th to get first dose.
Maybe this is why people don't want
nigga point Nikki really.
Did you all see the tweet?
I see the tweet.
Okay, so on she Twitter page, I didn't see the tweet. She really put that up?
She put this. I read it a few times. You guys be careful. My cousin's friend in Trinidad took the vaccine. His testicles got swollen, and he was he was due to marry, and now his fiance has called off the wedding because he has become impotent.
This is the most Trinidadian thing Nikki ever seen. She like,
It's like if you was unsure she was Trinidadian before, you're sure now. You're sure now. That's real. Couture.
Yeah.
And then other random news, man like Boombi get shoot up, and then other men started dying until so the gang wars go on as usual, right?
That's a heights.
Nothing. Then we boy Keith and Daphne passed away. Clifford,
boy.
Lemon.
Clifford.
Don't you remember Keith and Daphne?
The big man in the theater.
UNCPNM kind of thing. Yeah, he's a big man in the theater. He was there, very very much present on the screen, on the TV screen in the 90s. Young people don't know about him now. Him and Errol Fabian and them, but
Raymond Chukong, Penelope, thing. Nikki, all of them.
That's two of them gone there. Let's see. There's two of them gone there.
And it's cool.
So,
no,
I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
I think he had something else he's suffering from, I believe. But condolences to his family.
Okay.
And well, finally, to transition into our actual topic for tonight, which is traffic in Trinidad. COVID-19 helped the traffic situation. Could it be seen as a solution? So we all know that how the traffic has been impacted by COVID due to lockdowns, due to no school, especially, right? Especially because you don't have any school, you're not having people that are taking to the roads, taxis aren't as full, maxis aren't as full. They don't have a set of
Mm.
cars on the road as they would have in the morning. So the morning traffic is a little less. It was much more less. It's kind of getting back to a point now. The point is, what are we telling ourselves about the traffic situation?
Well, that's a serious thing because that show it's not just hard structures there, but it's a social reality too.
Social, I agree with that. Is we need to change our mentality. I should think all them foreign news we bring down. Sometimes, so I a man, all I know I just come down from Canada every once in a while, and it's be amazing to me to see when I just driving through the amount of cars and people yard, bro.
Yeah, dog.
That is a fascinating. It's like everybody in the household who could drive have a vehicle. So you're talking about like 6 cars in 1 year.
3, 4. Yeah. Like you're running out of car park space. But all you know in Micronesia is the same thing. All of Japan foreign use vehicles and thing it is sell long here. You understand what I'm saying? And it's a foreign use dealers and that kind of thing. We ain't reached the point yet where the criminal element evolved to the point where the thief and car door and thing and it have a market for that yet. But hopefully it has some time before that come down here. But it just goes to show, it's all kind of different factors. Like traffic is a real complex beast, Dread.
Yeah. And it's a great equalizer, as we said, because at the end of the day, no matter who you're reaching it, you're in it. You're in it.
Yeah. Whether you're in BMW or Lexus or whatever.
Yeah. So our guest tonight.
Dr.
What we know about our guest tonight?
Furlonge.
A fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers, a fellow of the Institute of Transportation Engineers. So he's a real fellow, fellow of the Association of Professional Engineers of Trinidad and Tobago, APETT, as they call it, APET probably, I'm not too sure, and a member of the Association for European Transport. He's a past president of APET, and Dr. Furlonge has been involved in professional practice in transportation, planning, and traffic engineering for more than 34 years in both the public and private sectors within Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean region. We welcome Dr. Rae Furlonge. Welcome, Dr. Furlonge, to the Heights Room.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Dr. Furlonge, your company, the consultancy, is called LF Systems, right? And they would be pioneering, if you want to call it, this kind of work in our country, in the region, when it comes to this topic, when it comes to these issues. Can you tell us a little bit about the saga of LF Systems?
Yes, well, LF System was actually a pioneer not only in Trinidad, in the Caribbean, in the area of traffic impact assessment. Previous to that, and in fact, still in many of the islands, they do that. The various public works agencies, ministries of public works, and so on, they do that type of work in-house for developers and so on. But in the first world, that is done by the private sector. So I initiated that sometime in the late 90s.
Oh, okay.
And we do other things in traffic and transportation, but that is really our core business. And
I hear you.
It's still.
So what are some of the more interesting local or international transportation projects you would have worked on, just off the top of your head? Because I know there will be many.
Right. Well, in terms of the Caribbean, one of the widest projects I did with sometime in around 2009 was we studied 17 of the Caribbean territories, and I visited quite a number of them as part of the work. Not all of them. Some of them we studied from their data and remotely, but we studied the overloading of trucks in the islands, which is the problems, of course, damage to the roads and so on. Of course, a safety issue as well in terms of runaway trucks as a result of being overloaded, damage to cranes at the ports, the potential for damage to cranes and so on. So that was a big work for us. 70, as I say, 70. Another useful project to me was we studied the transportation issues in Belize City in Belize.
In Belize.
That's outside of here. Way back in the 90s, as a young professional, early 90s, I as an individual assisted my supervisor in some local studies, that's more transportation modeling, planning and stuff in India while I was a student there. In Trinidad, some of the projects that jump out at me now even is I did for the Point Lisas energy executives, I did a study of disaster emergency evacuation plans, to simulate it, the real-time simulation of disasters. I didn't come up with the type of disasters, emergency, and so on. They came up, I think it was 10 or 12, and they gave me the details of it. And we collected the data of the existing traffic at different times of the day, and we superimposed the type of disaster that they detailed to us, and we simulated it in real time, including what to do. The model, the model would have simulated where to pass and to evacuate and so on, and then we came up with recommendations to build resilience into the estate. I'm not sure how much that was done somewhere around 2012. I'm not sure how much of it, but one of the interesting studies to me, apart from some things, is that I'm not involved in Carnival in any way, the parade of the bands, but I did a project with it way back for 3 years. For 3 years, and it actually resulted, they implemented it. And I monitored it and so on, and it actually resulted in the reduction in congestion and the parade of the band. Sorry? The band traffic.
Okay.
By
So
4
that's when
hours.
the Socodrome came up?
That's how the Socodrome evolved, yeah. When people like Dean Hacking and so on saw it, they said, hey, this has a potential. But you know what was strange? The results coming out of it. And by the way, the board then of the National Carnival Commission, I actually used them to understand where the most of the problem was actually on the drag. They couldn't understand why. So I actually used them as the individual members of the board and played music and put some marks on the ground and told them to jump, walk to the beat of the music on these spots. And they walked and they crashed into each other. And I said, that is the problem that is going on in the drag. So it was sold. We implemented it, but what came out of it, funny enough, then some of the stakeholders came back to me and they said, when Carnival was ended by 5 o'clock that particular year, and the parade was ended that year, they said, who told you we wanted Carnival to shorten that much?
It's like they like the chaos.
But I tell you, there were 55 bands parading from the data. No, they were collecting geographic information system data, GPS, right? The GPS data they were collecting every year for many years. And I simply used that data, put it into the transportation models, treated the system as a train. So we had 55 trains operated on one route. Of course, the computer crashed many times because 55 trains and so on. But it actually worked. So you got it in real time, and I put on, to demonstrate it, I put on a Marshall. That time Marshall was there with the truck on the road or something like that. You put it to that music, and the band, you see the band, the head at the front of the band moving around. And then we actually went on the ground. I walked about 21 kilometers for 2 years to monitor before and after. And yes, 4 hours. And then we plotted all the graphs and everything on the ground. We saw where the delays were. We implemented it. So, you know what is coming out of all these years I spent in doing traffic studies? My biggest success was actually with Carnival.
With people tripping down the road.
I have least interest.
So, talking about results, I want to get back to that study you did regarding the trucks and it being overweight and stuff like that. that is something that's always kind of fascinated me from since young. I've always wondered. I grew up in Princeton, so you see all these truck with cane and thing, and you see the truck leaning. So I always
Tasca. Steady with Tasca.
and I always wondered about, because the Tasca Road always mashing up. So what was the results of that study of these overloaded trucks and things, and what is the impact?
You know what was amazing to me from that study? Yes, and in Barrackpore and Princeton, you have some of the worst kind of, those is some of the worst type of Tasca, the ones that carry the sugarcane across the road. So apart from the damage to the road, nothing could pass in either direction when those vehicles. Do you know Trinidad was the only country of the 17 territories that did not participate in that project? We got the laws, legislation from all the territories. Of course, I had it from Trinidad as well. And then we had seminars and workshops in some of the islands, inviting everybody. The only country out of the 17 that did not participate was Trinidad. You know why? Because we are great in Trinidad. We are great.
Everybody
we know everything.
Everybody's expert.
Yeah. Way back in, I'll give another example. Way back in 1994, I, in conjunction with the University of the West Indies, held a training seminar, a training course, 1 week on highway geometric design, how to design roads for mountainous territories in the Caribbean. Again, Trinidad, there were a lot of people came from the Caribbean territories. There were 2 people came from Trinidad and none from the public service. The 2 were in the private sector. Don't we have mountainous roads in Trinidad? Maybe not as high as some of the other territories, but we do have mountainous roads, right? We have the lady,
very much so.
Maracas and so on, the different places. So you cannot ignore if you have the Central Range. They may not be as mountainous. I also examined the Solomon Ochoa Highway, the North-South Highway, and it was well designed geometrically, except in one part. That's a part by Petrotrin, but that's a next story why that was badly designed.
That's by me, Gasparello.
And I could speculate why that was an error.
Yeah, because
I did a paper on that as well.
Yeah, and my whole life is just hearing cars crashing.
You know it. But there's another project I wanted to highlight that I was involved in, and perhaps you might find it interesting. The Brian Lara Cricket Academy for the Caribbean.
That fucking worse. That was
right. But I was involved in this. Well, I was involved in the studies there, and it showed what was needed before and after, and the analysis, and it actually confirmed what we told them. Listen, as children, we learned in school 4 into 2 cannot, correct?
Right.
And we are accustomed trying to put 4 into 2, 3 into 1, whatever you want to call it. We learned that it cannot work. Or sometimes you may have heard colloquially the China bottle syndrome or the nuts bottle syndrome. You flip the bottle suddenly and nothing could flow. So listen, it is not the solutions. Let me start off by saying the solutions to traffic are not obvious. If they were, we would have solved it already.
Exactly.
But
everybody feels he or she sits behind the driver's seat. We know what the problem is. Of course you know, but you know it from your perspective.
That's it.
The transport manager, traffic manager, has to deal with the perspectives of everybody, including you.
The collective. It's not the individual.
And that is why in the next life, I will not be doing this again. Because it is always a negative criticism, right? There's no thanks in this. Nobody sets out a career for thanks. But why? I'm not masochistic. Why?
Right. Yeah. But Doc, let me ask. I mean, we have 3 major sectors to really tell the story, right? Which of traffic in this country for this episode. And one of the first parts of the story is how did traffic get this bad, right? I mean, I live in South and was working in town for about 5 years. I was living in Marabella, right? And I used to have to hit that highway every day. And you talk about the North-South highway. So I want to get into that a little bit. because I think we unpack different projects, we would kind of gradually get to some of the roots of the problem. Just taking south to north. I want to go to north, right? I have a car. I want to go to north. Why has traffic gotten so bad over the past 20 years on the highway? I just had dog cross the road.
I'm happy you go there because that is exactly where I want to start, right? And I want to tell you straight off that I don't think many of your viewers, perhaps yourselves as well, will appreciate where I'm going with this, because it will betray people's lack of understanding of what are the causes of the problem. You see, what you are experiencing, what you just described, and many others are really symptoms of the problem, not the causes. We have a little equation we use. It's not a mathematical equation, it's just a relationship. And it goes like this. Land use planning minus transportation planning is equal to traffic management problems.
Interesting.
Let that digest a little bit. So when you have land use layouts and programs and so on, and you do not have the relevant transportation planning, you are reaping the rewards of that. You might be surprised to hear what I'm about to say. We do not have any agency of government in the public service responsible for transportation planning.
What do you mean by that?
So is the transport branch, but the transport branch.
Well, let's talk about what they do.
Right. My understanding was when I used to deal with Zanim and Mahadev, great guys. All of them was great guys. And Dexter and the guy that retired, who in Calco now, I forget his name, Ganesh.
Roger Ganesh.
Right.
Roger Ganesh.
I would get in talk to them. I would get away with the gods of the traffic. If you talk about traffic, you had to talk to them. So my thing is that as a taxpaying member of the public, I would think that responsibility lies there. Well, let me start legally. At the very least, legally, that is the responsibility. Talk to me.
Well, I'll come to that. In fact, one of your commentators, one of the comments, I should say, is from a former employee of the traffic management. I'm just reading it there. Okay. But I'll come to that. I want to share something. I want to share a chart, probably the only chart I'll share. May I do that on your program here? Is it easy to
share?
Yeah, just share.
Let me just thing that says share screen there, and I will have to just bring it up. Okay.
Tell me as soon as I can do it, and I'll do it.
So you gotta hit. So next to the mic, you see the camera.
Just go ahead and
share.
I pressed the share already, so I can put it in. Yeah. Tell me when you're seeing
what you see, because I'm not seeing anything come up. Wait.
Maybe scroll down to Orion and see if it's underneath us.
Yeah, don't try that. Me again, nothing. What you seeing there, Doc? On your end. Is it a link or is it a?
Yeah, just share entire screen.
Tell me if you're seeing you.
Nothing yet. That's okay. We could always come back to it.
We'll come back.
Okay. Let me tell you it then in words, because
okay. Now you can bring it up on your screen there, Doc. Now we can get.
Yeah, we got it.
So now
you're seeing it now.
Pull it up on your whole screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Full screen.
Full screen it. So there we go.
Yeah.
You're seeing it there?
Right.
Lovely.
And then I'll press stop. Right. This is actually. I designed this to explain what a transportation system is, and you can make it specific to public transport. You can make it specific to different types of transportation modes that you have. Okay, but this is just the generic form. It starts off with people. Note everything I'm telling you. It starts with people. It goes down to the vehicles. The vehicles could be any mode. It goes down to the routes. The routes could be road, air, water, river, sea, like that. Terminals can be parking garages. It can be public transport terminals and so forth,
Right.
stations and so on. And then it swings. You see it swinging to the left and the right. When it swings left, you talk about maintenance. As you know, maintenance is a bad word in this country, right? So because right in any form of maintenance, and transport maintenance is no exception. And then it swings right to information and control, right? We hardly have signs. I always give an example. If I were to take you to Port of Spain, you're going there for the first time, and I put you at the Cipriani roundabout, better known as KFC roundabout in Port of Spain. I put you down there at Brian Lara Promenade, and I tell you, go and get a taxi and go St. James.
Yeah.
Most people will not know what to do.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? Because there's no sign telling you walk up Frederick Street and you will see by Woodford Square there, where to get. You will not know because there's no sign. So information and control. But so these are the components, and of course they have to be interactive and they have to work together. Right. But we have concentrated. If I were to ask you, name the primary focus of attention on our transportation system in Trinidad, which one will you tell me?
Road vehicles.
The roads, right? Yeah. Good. I'll come back to that just now when I talk about the National Transportation Plan. And the second thing since 1990 or so has been vehicles, right? The foreign use vehicles, the imported use vehicles. We'll talk about those too, right? I'll stop sharing now. I'll come back to the talking.
That's okay. I can take care of that. So you go.
Good. Right. So what I'm trying to show, what I've been trying to show, let's talk with the road. In 1967, 66, 67, we did our very first national transportation plan for this country. Right? Torian, you're in Canada. We hired some Canadians. Very interestingly, we told them, write your own terms of reference to do what you think is necessary, because we didn't have the kind of expertise then. Okay. You know what they did for this country? They did a road plan and called it a transportation plan. Everything was road. Everything fit. Everything concerning public transport and transport terminals and everything else fit on about 2 pages. The entire thing was a road plan called a National Transportation Plan.
No, that is.
However, at the same time, around the same time, the country of Singapore, the island, was formed just around the same time like us, and they did their first National Transportation Plan. They're a quarter of the size of Trinidad. The island of Trinidad, they're a quarter of the size. 4 times the population, just over 4. And their plan focused on public transport. Till today, Singapore is the paragon of public transport in the world. In fact, there's a joke. They compete with Hong Kong. Who is the better territory for public transport? And you know how they compare? One this year would have delays of 15 minutes in a day.
In a day?
Delay. One will have it. This time, Hong Kong beat them. Hong Kong has less than 15 minutes of delay. Right? We have had a plan where the horizon year is the end of your plan, right? For listeners who are not familiar. Our horizon year from 66 was 1985. So 1985, we should have achieved everything by way of implementation in that first study. Do you know today, just 40% of that plan was implemented? Just over 40%. Till today, just 40%. So what have we achieved with that first plan? Now, you may argue there was a plan done in 2005.
They see it, yes.
You're following. Interesting thing about that, and I've written many articles on that, right? I used to have a weekly column in the Newsday. I wrote 444 articles either. And I challenged that consultant. By the way, that was a 24 million TT dollar study, yeah? 24 million.
Right.
That's not a small study, yeah? That's a huge study.
Which study is this? The CNTS study?
CNTS.
Comprehensive National Transport
But do you know that the very consultant that was doing that study to prepare a plan for transport for a future. Before they finished the study, they were awarded project management of the rapid rail. Now, how does that work? How does that work? Is that conflict of interest there, you think? What do you think that they're going to propose? What do you think that study was going to propose to the country?
Rapid rail.
That we need rapid rail, right?
But I mean, even
after a while, the study was rejected by the very same people who hired them. Right. They were fired after paying them 10 million. So they say. So they say they pay them 10 million. I don't know. Right?
But let me say this though, Doc. Let me still say this, right? And I'm glad that you're saying, well, you know, you want to go in the full depth of the conversation. And trust me, we ready for it, both in the viewers and the host, because that is the purpose of the height room, right? We carry things to a different level of height. We're going to the full depth of the conversation. That's right? So I want to challenge that concept a little bit in terms of the plans, because I know in Trinidad we love to create plans because we are a very political country, a politically charged country. That, you know what I mean? Okay, you want to say you do something, you do, but of course, when the work comes and you have actually cross political terms, that's when the challenge comes, because it's like, well, you know, certain friends can eat our food, so I want to give up on that plan. I want to do a totally new plan to let a new set of people eat our food and whatnot. But starting with the North to South Highway, from my understanding, and talking to a friend of mine out here, a mutual friend, Dr. Jared Osborne, also a trafficking out of Miami, he had a point that to me hit me very, very strong, in that he said, well, when you're transporting, where you're transporting, vehicles or you're transporting people? And I stopped and I was like, oh, I didn't think I'd like that. He's like, it's people you're transporting. Forget how you're transporting them. It's people. And the conversation of moving forward, I think, is to understand how to interpret congestion. So for the layman, we interpret it as I was going north in the morning. I had to stay through traffic because a dog crossed the road and everybody had to macro. You understand? For me, that is a capacity issue. Is it a capacity issue?
All right. I'll explain. Incidentally, and Gerard could tell you a whole lot more. Gerard was actually a member of the consulting team that did that study. They didn't like it. He was one of the local firms, right? Okay. And I'll come to the people side of the transportation, and I'll answer your thing on congestion. Right. But I just wanted to deal, because I have it in an order so that your listeners could see where I'm going with it, right? Right. So I wouldn't forget to tell you about the definition of congestion and what, and we have a rule of thumb of how we can analyze the amount of delay. We use a rule of thumb as traffic engineers. So I'll explain that. But let me go from the point with the transport study and the road study towards the vehicles now. As of the early 90s, and I wrote you a note before this to give, so you can get an idea. The emphasis of successive governments has been making car ownership cheaper by facilitating their use by progressive capacity improvement. So two things government have been doing since that time. They have been expanding the roads, creating capacity. What is capacity? Capacity is the number of vehicles that can pass a point on the road. One point, you stand up at the side of the road and check the number of vehicles that pass. That's the capacity. The ability of the road to accommodate those vehicles, right?
So that's like added lanes.
Yes, depending on how the road is operating. So that if not only the physical structure of the road, but the condition of the road may slow down vehicles. You see a dog blocking the road, a newspaper vendor on the road, potholes on the road, a maxi taxi stopping on the road. All of those constrain the operations of the road, so that affects the number of vehicles that actually could pass during a certain period of time. I think that is, you understand that, right?
Okay.
But in addition to that, we have been focusing almost exclusively on vehicles on road. We talk about that. But until 1990, the imported used car industry did not exist in the Caribbean. Didn't exist.
Oh, really?
But yes, until 1990. But Japan's strict motor vehicle inspections and high depreciation, which caused vehicles to be of very little worth after 6 years, as well as their stringent vehicle emission standards, made disposal very expensive in Japan. So the option that the owners, vehicle owners and companies came up with after this period, dumped them. So suppliers started getting, importers in the Caribbean started getting vehicle very cheaply and saying, we're getting a very nice vehicle, 6-year-old vehicle. But it was really dumped because the cost of using that very same, the insurance standards and so on, cost of using that vehicle there was very costly, right? So imported used car dealers have been able to grab them at very low cost and in good condition and compete successfully with imported used cars for nearly 30 years. So what was exciting for government? Incidentally, I was the chairman of the transport policy for National Internal Transport Policy for Trinidad and Tobago. You go on the net, you'll see it, NITP, National Internal Transport Policy. You'll see the document there. And we submitted a draft document and it was rejected by the then government in November 1996. Why? Because of what I'm about to say. Successive governments have boasted that they are providing access to cheap cars for the common man and creating many business entrepreneurs in importing used cars, and how much revenue government was making from taxes on the flood of imported used vehicles. Everything I just told you, including the problem of the imported used cars. We didn't call it foreign used cars in those days. We called it imported used cars. We predicted that what is happening today would have happened, and the document in November 1996 was rejected. So much so, we never even got to submit the final document. I was an employee of the Ministry of Works and Transport in those days. And the team, we had a huge team of about 20-something people from Trinidad as well as Tobago. And the committee from April to November was disbanded, and that was the end of Solomon Agondi. Right? So now we have the negative environmental effects from scrapping of vehicles. You know, but all these scrap vehicles, if you fly over with a plane, you see them. Poor visuals, part of dump vehicles, solid waste problems, the scrap tires, because we have imported used tires as well. And when you're not making, where you cannot get the parts, you get the stealing of vehicles and the vehicle parts and so on, stealing vehicles to scrap it for parts, etc. So it didn't happen overnight. But one more point on that, one more statement on that point. Even though private car ownership is high in this country, the reality is that the majority of the population do not have access to the private car. And that is actually the substance, should be the substance of transportation planning in this country. The future of transportation. Yeah, okay, go ahead. I'll stop there and let you make your point.
So then let me carry that thought a little further then, though. Because for me, I only have foreign used car because that is all I could afford. Most people, Doc, when you graduate and thing, you're making no set of money. So to buy a new car is almost impossible. You understand what I'm saying? So I don't know who their market is, but you're quite right in terms of, well, get into the mind of the actual average millennial then, you know, why you buying the car. Well, I buy in the car because taxi then used to come in the back of Marabel, the back of Gopolands. You understand? For me to get out of there, I would have to walk for about 10 minutes to go and get a taxi to go Sando before I get a taxi to go town. So then now I will add to that and say there was also a failure for me in whatever projects that was implemented for pub to get access to the public transportation network for all of these communities safely. So now for me, as a guy from South, I was excited about the rapid rail. But to me, so let me get into that then. So I want an option. Why a rail system then why
All
is
right,
that not?
we come to the rail. I wrote about 100 articles. They're all there. You could go and see them and use it. But you probably wouldn't like the immediate answer that I'm about to tell you. You see, you are speaking from the perspective of a male. You know, if it was a woman talking to me there instead of you, she will sound completely different from you. Hear how? There's a saying: when men have money, they buy a car. When women have money, they see body children. See the difference? It's a wicked cycle. Disposable income and equity. That's why, remember I told you equity is a major part of this discourse. The narrative has to change to equity. And equity, not only from the physically challenged and the able, but equity from the perspective of gender. Women are the ones who are facing, women and children, who are facing the majority of the insensitivities towards transportation planning. Right? That's why I started off this conversation saying that the transportation policies are always effectively from the driver's seat. And the drivers most of the time are men. Most of the time. So that it's a wicked cycle. I'm sure you see early on mornings, the women and children, well, when things were normal, pre-COVID, when things were normal, you would see them 5 o'clock standing up with the children, finish combing the children here. Right? Waiting for, and I don't call it waiting, I call it hoping. Because a major part of the problem is public transport. And I want us to come to that. Public transport, which is given in the first world, which is a given in the first world. We have never had management of public transport in Trinidad. Never. It has always been. And by the way, just as a sidebar, and we'll come back to it. Taxis. We have a unique phenomenon here. Taxis are operating as mass transit vehicles. That's why when you see a stand, you see 20 cars parked at off-peak periods waiting for people. Unbelievable. It's the most foolish thing I could say that has happened to our public transportation system. That you have a mass transport vehicle transporting 4 to 7 people at a time. And you call it a taxi system, but it is forced to transport as a public transport vehicle, mass transport, because of no plans for public transport. But let's stick to what you're saying about the desire. How do you get to your mobility? How do you get to move around to access mobility and accessibility? How do you get to access your desires, where your destinations and so on? We should have never had it this way. We should be planning for people. It starts at the top people, not planning for vehicles, not planning to make business people out of public transport. Listen, here's what's going to happen in the world. Here the next thing that we are going to have, the next phenomenon we're going to have in Trinidad here, more dumping. The developed world, they're always trying to think of sexy things to do to keep their vehicle sales on the frontal burner. The latest sexy move, and I spoke to an audience in India, and you know you're talking a big audience when you talk India, right? Right. In June last year. Autonomous vehicles. You heard the term? Autonomous vehicles. Right. In North America, you already have semi-autonomous vehicles on the road. I've driven them already. But you're talking autonomous vehicles. Okay? That's the next wave that the vehicle manufacturers are hoping that takes the world. Because people have bought what they want to buy already. However, right along with that, we have electric mobility now. Many countries have, in the next 5 years, they will no longer have fossil fuel vehicles on the road. Diesel, petrol, many countries have it already. 5 years time, by 2025, no fossil fuel vehicles. What do you think going to happen to those fossil fuel vehicles?
Where they're going to go?
Die for we.
You're going to get BMW cheap. You got BMW for 10,000. Why is that BMW you're driving? It's 3 Series. You get me?
And people here, I mean, the obsession with the vehicles, the culture, that everybody, has to have a car. Everybody has to
be a workman.
It has become normal. We have these.
They'll be like Jamaica. Jamaica only have plenty. But you know what happened? we signed in 2017, we signed the Paris Agreement for carbon emission reduction. So we are forced to go towards carbon emission reduction. We have to go the way of electric mobility policies. We have to go. Barbados is the leading Caribbean territory in this area. They have already, and by the way, is a Trinidadian who was rejected in Trinidad, went there and did the policy development and guidance.
No surprise
in Barbados. You're not surprised, right? Good.
That is who?
And no,
that is who?
That's him.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Just making sure. Just making sure.
Yeah. But so we have to go that way. They're already going that way. The big ticket items are for those, if you know about, and if your listeners know about electric vehicles and mobility, the charging infrastructure and so on. But we have to go that way because that's the way of the future. Now we are doing something in Trinidad. We are developing a hydrogen plant, not for the primary purpose of fuel cell technology for the electric vehicles, but it can work as a spin-off. It's for something else, but it can work as that. So we can come back on the front line in technology if we desire to help our need for carbon reduction and get back on the right track.
This is new gen. This is new
gen. Correct. This is new gen. New gen. Yes.
So if you know about that, because I've been trying, even last week we had Graham and talking about renewable energy.
Yes.
And I did that kind of idea of hydrogen energy and what it is. What is it really, Doc? Is it that something that could act as a power source and then almost set that infrastructure for electric?
It can, because the process is electrical. You remember, your energy production is only good as where you're getting it from, the raw end. And if you're getting it from natural gas as our electricity, our energy production is now, then you're still not 100% renewable. You with me? But if the process is electrolysis, that you're using water and your emission is water, then you're renewable. You with me?
Right.
See?
Right.
So they are using it, I think, in the methane in industry. But a spill-off of it could be hydrogen that can be used, just as you use fuel, the fossil fuel, petrol, and so on. You use it at a pump for the fuel cells and so on. At the moment, the electric vehicles, they have very heavy batteries, right? It's battery powered, right? 2,000 kilograms. But would you believe the weight of those batteries and the consequent cost of those batteries are coming down? They now have electric vehicles in SUVs. They now have vehicles in vans, buses. So the entire modal system is shifting towards. But I am not saying we go the way of the vehicles. It is still the tool. The vehicle is a tool. Our transportation policies have to swing the way of people first. And by people, where they're coming from, where they're going, why they're going, right? Somebody asked a question on your chat here, and it's good to talk on it, about online. Is online the answer to reduce traffic congestion? And I would say no. Online has its purpose, and it's called, for working and so on, for employment, telecommuting. The planners have been trying to get telecommuting since the 1980s, but COVID did it for us. Right? But it has its place. I want to tell you something, that I don't think online education is for everybody. There are some children.
Agreed.
I know if my son was a little fella, I would have to have personal tutoring for him because he's easily distracted. You know what I mean? So it has to be determined, not for the purpose of transportation, that you have education, you have to plan it properly and engage the stakeholders and so on, which is an important part. But sticking with, you need to have equity. You need to have equity in your transportation. Now, you mentioned about the congestion, and I told you I'll get back to the congestion. You know where the congestion is right now? The congestion is in the city, urban centers. It takes more time. I live in Chaguanas. It's more time to get out, 40 minutes to get to the highway. Well, I'm talking pre-COVID, right? It's getting back there. By the way, it's getting back there. Although things are not yet fully open, but it's getting back there. It takes 40 minutes to get to the highway. and then the next 40 minutes to get to Port of Spain. Right? So the problems are circulation, getting around the town of Chaguanas. And by the way, Chaguanas has more mobility than even Port of Spain now. Right? It's a very vibrant town, but it's, daytime mobility. Daytime mobility. So something that will take you 15 minutes on a Sunday will easily take you 45 minutes in the week. Right? And you have different types of congestion. You have a morning peak period, you have an evening peak period, and you have a midday peak period.
Right.
And I think that is largely due to the curfew, because people are trying to undertake a lot of things during the daytime period.
During the day now.
So
go straight home.
In terms of the highway, the north-south highway, you have 2 evening peaks. You have an evening peak around 3 o'clock because of the people who went to work for 7. So they're leaving 2 and so on. And then you have the normal 5 o'clock. So you have a 3 o'clock and a 5 o'clock peak. Sometimes they blend into each other. So the north-south highway, the southbound, you have a longer or an extended peak period. Okay. And that is because we are now taking our cars to work. Have you ever noticed that when you take your car, when you go to Port of Spain, you park, you don't move your car, if you have to go from the office to some other place in Port of Spain, you walk or take a taxi, and you leave your car there. So the car is no longer taking you to work. You are taking the car to work.
So to kind of fall in a little bit about this, so as you say, making it about people and transporting people. How feasible is a light transit, rapid transit system in general?
Right. That is where I'm going. The future, there are 3 things we have to look at: short term, medium term, and long term. So in terms of the car, that's what I'm talking about, the car here now. Yeah. We have to find ways, and please note it, we have to find ways to reduce the vehicle kilometer of travel. In the States, you call it vehicle miles travel, VMT. We have to reduce the VMTs. The States, North America, and so on. You have to find, when you go into the books, you go into the annual statistics collected by the Federal Highway, by the Ontario government, and so on. You will see VMTs. We have to find ways to reduce the VMTs, vehicle miles of travel, which means what it is. It is the amount of miles traveled by a vehicle annually. Okay? And of course, they usually divide that by the population of the city. So you get the vehicle miles of travel per capita. We do not collect that data. Many times I have to do study. I once did it for an IB study on carbon emission, and I had to collect it manually. How do you do it manually? Each link of the road. A link of a road is between 2 intersections. You find the volume passing on that road, and you multiply by the length of the road, both directions. Can you imagine how complicated that is if you have all these intersections and so on? Yeah. But that is collected annually in the developed world. Right. What does it mean by reducing that? It means we have to find ways to take the car off the road. You remember I started this talk by telling you some of you will not like what I'm about to say. It is not about you. All the car ads on TV, the new car ads, you see a new car driving out and driving alone on the road. Brand new and you driving freely. You will ever see that in real?
Close course.
You will come out the driveway and you will now interface your fancy nice car, and you will interface directly with the car that has no insurance. And God forbid you crash into that car. You have nothing to get. Right? Because as Shankara, I see you put last week when you put on your thing, the great leveler or something to that effect. Traffic, the great leveler. And traffic is the great leveler. Right?
Great equalizer.
It is a socialist situation. Traffic has brought us down.
Everybody on the same level.
Everybody on the same seat, except that the people in the public transport vehicle, they are more affected than you in your private car, because you cause any congestion for them.
Right. But then, Doc, if we look at it from perspective of, and I asked this in previous shows, and to kind of take us to the rest of the discussion, because big projects we're going to talk about now. I go in and give you, Doc, $5 billion US, right? $5 billion US for the next 10 years. What are you going to spend it on and why?
Right.
What big capital projects
I
you
know
going to
appear
spend?
to be dancing around. In taking the cars off the road, we have to, when you talk about flood, I tell people flooding has a relationship with traffic, right? In fact, there's something called the fluid flow theory. I'm not talking about that here now. But when flood comes down the hillsides and so on, you always hear people talking about detain it, put a detention pond, and detain it. It's the same thing with traffic. We have to find ways to detain the cars remotely.
Right. So a detention
which is called
pond
park
for
and
cars.
ride. You ever hear the term park and ride? The car is not going to disappear. Everything I told you about fossil fuel and electric vehicles, remember we have vehicles that are not going to disappear. We have to find ways to detain them through a system of park and ride. Now, in Trinidad, park and ride will not be appreciated unless you have safety and security for them.
Of course.
People take their cars to work because they want to secure their car. They don't want to leave their car home for the bandit to take it home. So nobody is going to leave their car in a parking garage or a parking lot that is not secure. So you have to secure it. It has to be economical. It has to be worth their time. They must have the proper app. You leave on time and etc. All the conveniences that go with a well-operated park and ride. To leave it remotely and go to the urban centers or from the urban centers. So the first point we have to look at in the short term, we have to look at bus-based park and ride. Now, I know in Trinidad when we talk about bus, we mean PTSC. I do not mean PTSC when I say bus. PTSC is just a government-owned bus company. Okay?
Right.
And which probably they need to consider getting out of the operations of, because they simply transport less than 5% of the people.
That actually I agree with that. Yeah, it's true.
And yet they get $400 million every year. Jesus. So it's to many people, to some people, it's a government employment company whose business is transport. To some people, they think like that. But I'm saying a bus base, and I think that should be the PTSC's role could shift to maybe administration, public admin. I mentioned at the start of this, we do not have public transport administration. We never had it. Maybe their role could shift to that, I'm saying. But certainly operations, so a bus-based park and ride. Notice I said bus-based. Let me tell you a little bit about this rapid rail as you talk about it. I'm sure you don't even know where this rapid rail was going to pass.
No, I don't.
I'm not too sure.
Right.
I actually work with the consultant, so I know the plan. So I want to hear where you're going.
It's your fault, let's see. We are no rapid
It's
rail.
my fault.
Most of the people did not see it.
You understand? Yeah.
Let me tell you where it was going to pass, right?
Right.
It was going to pass in terms of the East-West corridor. It was going to pass on the side of the Beetham Highway and the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway, on the side of it.
Right.
Because the ideal locations for a rail route, whether it be light rail, rapid rail, metro rail, and so forth, must be where at the urban centers. You want to capture where people are nearest to, right?
Right.
So that is what the consultant advised the government. You can't put it, airy-fairy. So it was going to pass and by the way, a rapid rail needs a minimum catchment of 1 million people. The metro rail in DC transport more than 1 million people every day. We have 600,000 in the whole Trinidad and Tobago that require transport in the whole population. Mayaro, Port Spain, Toco, everybody. For the whole country, 600,000 for the whole day.
No, let me go down that road, Doc. No, let me go down that road, Doc. Let me go down that road. So you're saying that we need 600,000, right?
No, I say we have 600,000.
No, we say we have that.
We need 1 million. We need 1 million.
It needs to be 1 million. But I want to make a point here. And I want to make a point because the responsibility, the legal responsibility of our government is to provide safe transport for the citizens. Because a lot of the time, when I would have worked on several projects, there's a reason why I'm out in the Pacific here now, is because I bray a lot, and then they want to hear about that young boy and that kind of thing. No problem. Right. But it has to do with that fundamental responsibility. And a lot of times when people shut down capital projects that would help, is because they start to talk that talk feasibility, and you have to assess the social thing and whatnot. And if it don't balance off, listen, very few first world nations actually meant to move forward with a project or not based on that. I spent 2 months in China, Australia, and the Pacific. A lot of times they have funding agencies that just hear what? We want to solve a problem, we will invest in it. Now, of course, it can't be super unfeasible. But what I'm saying is that it can't be something to say go or no go. Why? Because in the first, I actually did a walkthrough with the people in Shanghai for the Shanghai Transportation Agency. Their first rail system was implemented in 1987. And when I went was about 2 years ago, Doc. And in that 2 years when I went, they were talking about the implementation of the 18th line, of which they're looking to bring maglev technology, right?
Yes.
And the maglev technology. So a lot of people say, well, hey, them is first one. In that 1987 project that was brought on, do you know the study actually showed that it was feasible? But they recognize, remember, it's the China government we're talking about. So they say,
but we're also talking about a place that have a billion people, I see, as well.
Exactly.
They have a billion people.
They didn't start out with a billion.
Shankara, you are an engineer. You must include cost, right? You cannot go to Parliament and say we need it because it's obvious, like the then minister said. That's what his solution. It's obvious.
I didn't say cost. You must work out cost. I agree, but is it that we say in Point Fortin Highway now feasible?
There's
no way Point Fortin Highway could be feasible now.
So Doc was saying, Dr. Furlonge was saying that in that other countries it's just generally 1 million to run the rail. In Trinidad, in the totality of all the commuters, we are 600,000. What was the point you wanted to make there, Doctor?
Right. So therefore, we have 200 or 300 buses, the big buses, 65 seaters. We have 4,500 mini maxis, 25 seaters and 12 seaters and so on.
Okay.
And we have 25,000 odd cars.
Okay.
Can't you not work out for the country a mix of those to capture where people are coming from, where they are going and why they are going there? Can't you not do that first in terms of working out the distribution and the need and the mix required before you jump to the next level? You see, in public transport, you have 3 levels of service. You have level A, level B, level C. Level A level C meaning the regular thing at grade, and you work out where, at grade meaning right at the road level, and you work out where people are coming from and you provide the services, okay?
Right.
Level B, you have some different levels. The service gets a little more easier to operate. Level A is when you have the rapid rail and exclusivity. Right. So for a city, if you have a city and you have to move it around, that I told you about 1 million needed to move. But we didn't have that. And I was describing the route. That had to go along the Beetham and Churchill routes. And the very first stop was Arangwes. So it means if the people living in Beetham and Barataria wanted to use it, they would have to jump in it from Port of Spain and drop off in Arangwes and take a maxi back home. Right? So it was not because it was a rapid rail, it had to be high speed. Yeah. It had to be high speed. Right? If it was a light rail, but then they could have more stuff. And then let's look at north-south. It was going to go east of the southern main road. It was going to go where the people are living. In other words, when it reached Chagonas, it was reaching Chagonas in Londonville. So when you came out of it in Londonville, which is about 3 miles from Chagonas urban center,
right,
you have to take a maxi or taxi to come back to Chagonas. And it was going past Prisal and those areas in the south. Shankara trying to describe it part on the east of the far east. So it was not where people thought, many people thought it was coming down the Uriah Butler Highway on the edge of the road. But it was not going there. It was going where the people are living. You asked about the point 14 highway. Let's talk about the point 14 highway because I did some
Yeah.
analysis.
Well, so I could tell you
Good,
that the
good.
problems I face is, you understand, and I want to make a
Good.
point, Doc, before you go.
So
Before you
wait,
go on.
wait. So Doc,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're trying to say that how, when in actuality the rapid rails system was not feasible.
No, because a rapid rail system, when I wrote about it, I looked at the literature and so the cost per kilometer of a rapid rail system, metro rail, is of the order of $135 million US per kilometer. Do you know if we had that system in the play and we had to be paying back that loan? Now, when you put down a rail system, you have to leave it for a minimum of 100, 200 years. Our rail system was in Trinidad for 100 years.
Well,
right?
It depends on the model.
And you can't build part of a rail system. You could build part of a road. You can't build part of a rail. You have to finish it.
But what's your financing model for that, Doc? That the persons will pay for that concept of how long it'll take to pay back? Is it that you're thinking that it will be direct pay in terms of what people pay to them in order to pay back? Is that how you envision
that's a good question you're asking. Let's look at what
spend a lot
Singapore
of time on PPPs, and I don't think that that's the best way to finance.
Well, let's look at the Singapore model. What Singapore did.
Right.
Singapore, of course, they have five. They are a city state, right?
Right.
They have 4 million. So they have 3,000 buses. Not 3,000 buses, 2 metro systems, 2 rapid rails. Right? They built both of them. And they bought the buses and they have private operators to operate it efficiently.
Correct.
They don't, and government doesn't operate it.
That's right.
Right?
And how they did
and
that,
they have the market for it.
Exactly. And you see how they structured that had to do with it makes it feasible for operator. It makes it attractive for operator. So the government
we were never the stakeholders in Trinidad were never given information on the rapid rail. I'm telling you, we were not.
Right.
You notice everything I compared what is outside. We were told that we needed it because it's obvious.
Yeah,
that is on Hansard record.
Wasn't the best. That's true.
Right.
We just hear the word rapid rail
about obvious.
All right. Well, let me go on the point 14 highway now because that billing, that almost done bill, almost is a relative
point 14 highway. I did some analysis on it, and I think the state company is very bad at explaining, not bad at doing it, but explaining what they're doing. That road is needed. Both the connection road. I don't care what Kublal Singh and others jumping up. That road that passes around to Siparia, it is a connectivity issue. Both areas are needed. The area that is going direct on the north side to the point 14, as well as the circulatory route passing through Siparia. They're both because it brings connectivity to the entire southwestern peninsula. I analyze it and I prove that. But it is not being explained by NITCO well. It's not that it is wrong, but they're not explaining it well, right?
But I am sure, Doc, that if you do a post-analysis now, how do you say that will show? It will show that it's feasible. Well, because it's close to 8 billion, huh?
Well,
next thing.
I'll answer you with 2 points.
It's not easy.
I'll answer you with 2 points.
Yeah.
Let me answer you in 2 points. And the worst one I'll tell you second. If I were planning that highway, I would have reserved the corridors, but after Pinal, I would have built 2 lanes.
Okay.
In the east, and likewise in the north and the west.
Right.
I would have kept it at grade at the relevant areas. In other words, I would have provided the road reserves. You must understand those things, and I would have provided what was needed for the next so many years until the capacity rises, such that I build the other facilities to do it. In other words, you were providing as needed. I would not have built 4 lanes from all those going down to point 40. It does not need it. And it probably will not need it for a long time. But they need the connectivity. And secondly, and which is perhaps the more important point, this country is a very corrupt country.
Well,
yesterday, so I don't know if the price is actually the cost. You with me?
True.
Yesterday,
True.
three
True. True.
policemen.
True.
Yesterday in the news, I know you all like the background information. Yesterday,
Yeah.
three policemen were jailed for fraud. One was an inspector of police,
Right.
right? But they're probably on bail. I don't know,
So who
right?
inspected the
But
inspector?
for
You know what I
fraud.
mean?
So I don't know when a price is
Right.
given, and I'm being very frank to you. When a price is
Right.
given, I don't know if that's the cost.
That's really
Right.
good.
Right.
We are very
Right.
corrupt place. Yeah.
And that is very important, Doc, because we have to be mindful of the unique situation that Trinidad finds itself in, where, you know, you're a small island developing state, and moving forward with large capital investment projects is not easy. Whereas if you look at, so if I were to look at the major capital investment projects that we did over the past 20 years, I could start with Napa, SAPA, all those things. If I were to add all of them and say, well, what was the benefits that they bring? There's no way any of them projects feasible. You understand? But we invested in it.
Yes.
And that's the point
I
that I
can't argue
want
with
to
you
make
on those.
from
I
a
can't
small,
argue.
and I'm saying that, Doc, to the perspective that the FSM, the Federated States of Micronesia, is exactly the same thing. That is the case with new budding islands, where you would have banks come in, because all the banks interested in is making money. They want to give you long-term capital investment loan. They will get taken out in the earlies, and then all they will catch to actually implement. They make their money at the beginning, and then all you figure out how to think it. So that in transport systems, however, in my mind, I'm saying that a lot of people put a lot of barriers to this in terms of we can't do this, we can't do that. I remember Engineer Doc had told me, well, listen, we already had the bus route, we already had the highway. You have no place to put no rail system, because the rail system, you will end up having to buy up all the land on the side, and Grand Bazaar own that one. You know, it was the first structure I saw when I went to Shanghai, Doc? An elevated rail system where they use the middle median, and that is the place where the pylons come in, and it looks like basically a flyover that runs overhead. So they look at the capacity from a 3D perspective rather than just 2D that you have to go across. So they elevate the rail, so you will be running the north to south highway, and you have pylons that will come up and elevate the rail system actually run across.
But I'm sure you talk about Shanghai. I'm sure
Yeah.
they were planning it for many years. The New Delhi
I'm
rail
sure.
system, the metro rail in New Delhi.
Yes.
When I was there in the late 80s, early 90s, they were planning that since the early 80s, and they didn't build
Yeah.
that until the 2000 and something.
Sure,
Right? They were planning.
sure.
They were planning for it, and this is what I'm saying. Quite frankly, I'll tell you, I believe a light rail system could work within Port of Spain, a tram system,
Right.
provided it is properly planned and not government road. Let it be concessioned out for PPP, right?
Yes,
and let them work out
I
the numbers and so on.
what
One of the
price they will
problems
charge
you'll have
people.
is there are a lot of utility problems underground in Port of
Yeah.
Spain, so that'll be a thing. But let those kind of things, the urban center type tram system, I think that could be valuable for foreign tourism and local tourism, like that. So I'm not against. People think when I talk, I'm against this and I'm against that and I'm against the other. I'm saying bring the justification. Every article that I wrote on the rapid rail, justify why and what you're doing. Look at our water taxi. Our water taxi is a very valuable thing. But the $15 that somebody pays to go from San Fernando to Port of Spain or vice versa, the state pays $115. Why? Why can't you concession that out like many countries do? For example, San Fernando. You all know that area very well. Concession out that whole area for the operator to have whatever activities, entertainment, even hotel, whatever is required to generate the income, so that he could have subsidized fees and privatize the water taxi, the coastal, I call it a coastal taxi system. It's very good. And then you link other areas, but let it do itself. Sorry?
And that's a lifesaver. And I will make a point with that, Doc. I remember when I went and started to live with my mom in Sea just for a little bit. That was when the talk of expanding water taxi to Point had come up. You know how much friends of mine, Doc, actually come and see just the tongue every day. Remember, they say the same thing. It's not justified. And I just say, look at how people from the city started to talk on behalf of rural people. And I remember at that time, Raymond Charles was the head of civil at that time. And I did a final year project, Doc, on the tunnel from Maracas to from Maracas to Mount Hope.
Yeah, that was
And I
Mr. Humphrey's
remember this.
baby. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. And I remember at that time they said it's not feasible at Cow. I remember when I presented Charles at the time, a very impressive traffic engineer, may his soul rest in peace. And he came up with the thing. He said, well, how you could say it's feasible if you haven't figured out what your financing model is? If you do it as a toll road, you know how much people can pay that toll to go straight to Maracas through the tunnel
Well, I want to correct you on that. I did a survey for a similar tunnel to Diego Martin. Well, not me. I did the data collection. It was a French company designed the survey and designed the
Vinci?
No, it wasn't Vinci. A firm called Aegis. Right? And after they did this survey, they started to almost jump on the table and say, boy, this is people say, they interview the what ifs, you had this and you had that, what you'll be willing to pay, willingness to pay. And people say they'll pay $100 to go from Lady Young to Diego Martin through a tunnel and thing under the. And I say, listen, in Trinidad, people lie,
Exactly.
Let me tell you something. Jamaica opened the first exclusive toll road in the Caribbean, right? Highway 2000, good? Right by Desto. And the Mandela Highway is on the side of it. Did you know that?
Right, that's the Chinese.
Next to nothing they're charging, and the Mandela Highway jam up with car every morning. Nobody want to pay the little thing to ride in traffic-free environment.
We want to take a little questions now, Doc, from the audience. So the first one we have is from Dennis Ramdas. He says, does the priority bus route in TNT make sense anymore? Is it just another mechanism for politicians to get PBR passes and avoid dealing with the reality of traffic in TNT?
Good. That question is so timely because I wanted to talk about that but forgot. That priority bus route is one of the most important features that the world has recognized. It was visionary when people like Dr. Lenny Sate and so on, who is also a transportation planner, of course a politician, but he was originally a transportation planner. He studied in India as well as he studied in U of T in Toronto.
Yeah.
It was visionary. He and I think Dr. Julian and so on, they were involved in planning that. It was visionary. It started in 74 in terms of the planning. It was finished, it was completed to ARIMA in somewhere around 89, 90. Why was it visionary? It was the first exclusive busway in our region. In fact, the first exclusive busway was built in the United States in the mid-90s. Mid-90s. How did I know that? Well, the great World Bank economist Gabriel Roth came to visit Raymond Charles in the 90s. I was teaching that time in the civil department. And Raymond asked me to give him a tour. So I asked him, I said, where would you like to visit, Professor Roth? And I thought he was making a joke. He said, well, I thought he's thinking about, you hear about Maracas, so like go Maracas or something. He said he wanted to go on the bus route. I said, what? I did not even, I had to go and ask, I was working in the Ministry of Works that time. I had to go and ask for a bus route pass. I said, well, why do you want to go on the bus route? He said, that is something you all have written one paragraph on, and that's a world phenomenon. Was then the longest exclusive busway in the world at that time, 26 kilometers. Imagine that. And we have not ever worked that as a busway even for one day. It has never functioned. In
so
Pittsburgh,
optimized.
Travel on it. In Pittsburgh, they have a busway just like ours, except it has some parking lots and so on along the route, which we should have had as well. And it's just 2 lanes, just like ours. But hear the name of that, priority bus route. I tell people, you must never call that priority bus route again. Call it PBR. It's better we don't know what it is. Right? Because everybody, they have flood on the road. Make it, even up to now, people talking, make that one way this way, 2 lanes, and make the Eastern Main Road 2 lanes the next way. Stupidity. Because they only think about cars. how to move cars.
Right.
Yes, not people.
When that road moves more people than the 7, or has the potential to move more people than all the lanes. The Churchill route has 6 lanes, the Eastern Main Road 2 lanes, and the bus route 2 lanes. So you have 10 lanes, and that road move more people than all lanes in terms of capacity. Remember we talked about capacity?
Yeah.
Section. So to answer your the comment of it is more than justified, but it should. By the way, that policy study we had in '96 asked to take everybody off the bus route who doesn't media, including doctors and parliamentarians, and that is one of the reasons why it was rejected. Right? You have about 1,600 of them now. Take them off and let it function as a busway. Okay.
So to keep it moving along here, we talk about removing all fossil fuels and things like that. We had a question from Nanda Sundan Raj Prasad. How many CNG stations it have in the country to try and encourage moving away from fossil fuels?
Right. Well, CNG was always a transition fuel. They knew that it couldn't stay as CNG, and as the way I'm hearing, I saw yesterday the minister of I don't know what he is now, but the minister talking about
energy,
moving rapidly to electric mobility. So it seems that even that transition CNG is for a much shorter period than we would have initially thought. The public would have initially thought. So it appears that they're going, and solar powered battery and charging stations. So it appears that way from what I'm reading.
Fair enough. Next question.
Mr. Ramu.
Yeah.
Here, very comprehensive. The Patrick Manning administration proposed the rapid rail system, while the Kamala Prasad BCS administration proposed the bus rapid transit, or that's the BRT, right? BRT system. Were any of these plans feasible, and did politics sabotage the best idea?
Well,
Leon.
Dr. Townsend, the Maxi people, myself and others were involved in sending a report to IDB. And I don't know, obviously politics, because I don't know to both administrations. I don't know what happened to them. What I do know is that the bus rapid transit was shown to be very feasible, and not only in terms of its applicability, but in terms of its deliverability, much shorter time frame. It was shown to be that.
Okay.
By the way, they have something, a concept now applied in some places called bus on the shoulder. There's a potential to use the shoulder lanes, use shoulder lanes in some jurisdictions. Maybe that is worth consideration here. In giving priority to public transport vehicles. Yes. Yeah.
Given the population densities on the 2 corridors, the rapid rail system was not the optimal technology. The IDB study showed that a BRT system would be far superior.
Right.
Maybe that's one of the members of the team answering that. Yes, that's true.
Yes. So that is Dr. Trevor Towns, and
well, there you go. Thank you, Dr. Townsend.
I would put out this, Doc, that I try to reach out to Dr. Townsend, and perhaps we could have both of you on our panel with Gerard out here. You know what I mean, to talk about traffic another time. But we would like to have, because I think there's some interesting perspectives.
Well, you probably need about 5 hours because
too much traffic.
Well, no. What I would suggest, let Dr. Townsend come and do his thing, and then let Gerard come and do it, because I don't want to interrupt them. Those guys have another thing.
We want to couture now. We'll bring them all at the same time.
Yeah, Gerard, they're both great guys. Yes, both great guys. Yes.
So we have any more questions yet, Torian?
No, I think we're good there.
All right. So let's see. I know that how you and Doc could take us into a whole nother hour or two of discussion. And I do believe that how Doc, if you would permit me to say that we would want to have you back on the show, and it might already be committing to that.
I feel
right?
honored. I feel honored.
Right.
Thank you.
So in time, by the next quarter, we give people a little bit of a cliffhanger, and we'll bring you back to talk more of what we could actually see as solutions for the problems that we have touched on, but tangibly, because at the end of the day, you solve problems in places that haven't been solved here. You understand? So we could talk more about these things. At this point in time, we went a little over our time usually because we could go on next hour, I know it. But we want to thank Dr. Furlonge for giving us his precious time at this hour. You understand? After so much meetings he would have had behind the screen, he's behind it with us again tonight. All right. But I'm really glad to have you here, Doc. So from all of us here at the Heights Room, thank you so much for this time.
This was good.
We want to thank all the viewers for logging in and giving us that little
questions
with the questions and so on, engaging in the Heights, right? Let's see, as usual, you are the architect or the engineer, of this
correct. Don't call me architect, you'll get me in trouble.
Of this episode. And Tora, I want to thank you for all your help with putting it together as well. From all of us here at the Heights Room, take care. We pick up next week. Blessed love.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Take it easy.